Shabbat Shalom. I have been thinking this week about Rabbi Rudolph, our Rabbi Emeritus. And today's his first Yartzeit. It's the first anniversary of his death. We say, Zichrono Livracha, that his memory should be a blessing. I was so lucky to know him for 2 years. And I know that there are many in this room who had much longer with him. I first really saw Rabbi Rudolph in action in that hallway outside the sanctuary, the hallway with the benches. It was Shabbat morning, and it was a few weeks after I started here at Bethel. A member of our community walked into shul and told me that his wife had just died. He didn't know what to do. He looked at me with that queasy, dazed look of someone who's had an unexpected encounter with death. I was wearing my talit, and I was holding my siddur, and I had some scribbled notes about the parsha, and I was sort of running around. This was a week when Rabbi Harris was on the bima officiating, so I was circulating to our various minyanim and classes and teaching and davening, and I'm also schmoozing and kibitzing. But instead this morning, I paused and focused all of my attention on this one heartbroken person. I invited him to sit with me on one of those benches. And we talked for a while. I asked him to tell me about her. And when I asked that question, I could tell he calmed a little. He let a wave of sweetness and pride come over him. She was so, so lovely, he said. And after a certain point, our question became more practical. He asked, which funeral home should I use? What are the pluses and minuses, and which one costs what, and a lot of details. I was still quite new to the area. So I briefly excused myself, and I found Rabbi Rudolph. And I asked him to join us. So he paused his own davening, and he walked over and sat with us on the benches. I will never forget what it was like to be side by side with Rabbi Rudolph. He was so incredible. He was calm and kind and confident and reassuring. He spoke softly and directly, and he knew what to say. He had empathy and not 1 ounce of pity. In my memory of that morning, he was glowing. He offered such generosity and care for everyone involved, for that man who lost his wife, and for me as a new rabbi. He offered himself in the most humble way whenever he gave me advice. If this is helpful, if you can use it, if it applies, in my experience, but you will figure out if you need that, what you need. Rabbi Rudolph cherished words, and he knew their power. He used words to comfort, like we did outside in the hallway, and he used words to teach. With his deep wisdom and his sharp, dry humor. So let's study this week's Parsha together with Rabbi Rudolph, who famously taught about the importance of thoughtfulness, using our words, thoughtfulness in speech. And some people will know where I'm going when I say especially on Wednesdays. especially on Wednesdays. So for our guests, let's explain. Rabbi Rudolph led a campaign for us to avoid gossip on Wednesdays. Who is part of this campaign? You want to raise your hand if you were part of this campaign? Who's still avoiding gossiping on Wednesdays? Some of you should raise your hand. Okay, we'll work on it. His take on gossip has a particular relevance this week as we study a parsha that, on its face, does not easily lend itself to modern conversations, to modern relevance. In the Torah, we learn about purification rituals after childbirth. Neither of the B'nai Mitzvah talked about that. How to diagnose and treat a variety of skin diseases, including leprosy, which requires a period of isolation. The Torah says that people who are diagnosed with leprosy have to be isolated. And Sarah, our bat mitzvah, talked about that. The Talmud later asks about this. Why is the leper in the Torah treated differently from other people who might be ritually or in other ways impure? Why do they have to live separately for a time? With our modern perspective, we might say that makes a lot of sense. They have a contagious disease. They should live separately. They don't spread the disease to others. But the rabbis of the Talmud choose instead to reinterpret the disease of leprosy to be more than a biological disease. Although it shows itself on the outside, it shows itself on the skin, these lesions are only external manifestations of a deeper problem, of a deeper disease. We could call it a spiritual disease of lashon hara, which means the evil tongue or evil or malicious speech. When a person causes harm through lashon hara, through malicious speech, they separate people. They break relationships. They create distance between us. And so in a kind of symmetrical punishment should match the misdeed, we separate those who've done the separating. So that's why there's a period of isolation for the leper. Rabbi Rudolph wrote about malicious speech in the very first column of his famous series called It's Wednesday. I already heard you all answering. This is the first column from March of 2005. To say something negative about another person can sometimes carry consequences we cannot imagine. It is always improper, even if it is true. We all know the story of the kid who spread gossip. The kid feels regret and goes to the rabbi to ask for forgiveness. The rabbi says, I have listened to you and will accept your tshuva as genuine. But there's one thing you must do first. Bring me a feather pillow. The kid is puzzled, but follows the rabbi's directions. And the rabbi says, now I want you to cut open the pillow and scatter the feathers to the wind. And the kid is even more puzzled, but he does it. Then the rabbi says, now I want you to gather all the feathers. That is impossible, says the kid. So it is with gossip, the rabbi replies. Few of us, this is Rabbi Rudolph still, few of us can get through an entire day without gossip, and it can be so harmful. So I have been thinking about a lot lately. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Rabbi Joseph Telushkin has written many books, one of which is the book Words That Hurt, Words That Heal. Telushkin has called for a day to hold our tongues and avoid any gossip. I wonder how many of us could meet the challenge to go through an entire day saying nothing negative about anybody. How many of us can search for the good and find only the positive. Maybe it's time to see right here. And with that, Rabbi Rudolph officially kicked off his community campaign to avoid gossip on Wednesdays. His thinking, I can guess, is that if we start with one day, eventually the goal would be, as he said, to become gossip-free most or all of the time. He said, I think we know that is the right path. We just need to be reminded to get on the path and to stay on it. We're almost 20 years later since that first column. On his first Yartzeit, Rabbi Rudolph reminds us to use our words with care and love. To comfort mourners, as he did with me in the hallway that Shabbat morning. And to use words to study and to teach Torah, as we are doing now. And not to gossip or for any other harm. May his memory always continue to be a blessing for all of us, and let us remember him on his Yartzeit and on Wednesdays and on every day. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.